what common problems do you encounter for the soil or for the flow of the estuaries of the rivers, or any other constituent parts of the environment that you're in? What are the most common problems that you encounter that people might want to know about, before buying a house there, or yeah.
Right. I mean, a big one that's common in the industry is like underground storage tanks, right? And there was a big craze in the past where like if you had an oil or like a gas heating system in your house, right, and an old home, they didn't want to have a big gaudy metal holding tank sitting on the ground in your backyard. So they thought, well, that's a great idea. We'll just put it in the ground, right? We'll dig a big hole. We'll take this steel case full of, burning oil or natural gas or gasoline, and let's just put it in the ground. That way no one has to look at it. Well, then 40, 50 years went by, right? And this is something that happened at gas stations a lot, right? They have underground storage tanks for all their stuff, but they made them out of like iron and steel. And this stuff corrodes over time because of rain and because of what's inside of it. So you get a corner of it that's a little bit more thin and a little bit of the gas.
I don't want any gas in my drinking water, personally.
Right? And so that's the kind of... Right? So it's a hard thing to look at. And so that kind of stuff happens. Wastewater. There's a lot about...
PFAS?
What's PFAS nowadays? I think it's PFAS. Perfluoral... non-aqueous. I forget what the acronym stands for off the top of my head. So PFAS is a chemical or a compound that's for like Teflon or nonstick stuff, or they put it in like firefighter equipment for fire retardant sprays. And it's something that's sort of stuck to everything, and it sits between the air-water barrier on the top of the water tables, and it's super, super soluble. The only way they've really found, to my knowledge, to get it out is to use bubbling apparatuses to bubble water and to make it get in these thin films and be able to pull the bubble foam out as the only place to remove it from the water. But it's something that doesn't break down, and it's in everything because like Teflon is something that in the production process and in the use has PFAS in it, right? And a lot of impellers for water pumps are made out of Teflon. So there's a lot of testing going around to figure out, is this stuff actually
Teflon's
harmful
literally
to people?
made out of
what are the side
flouride.
effects?
Which is a uranium compound. So it's probably pretty harmful. There are whole books on that. It is harmful.
Yeah, so the testing is still... The testing for it is still not fully conclusive to my knowledge, but it's something that a lot of municipalities are looking into and saying, hey, we need to look at this and stay ahead of the curve. Because a big part of it is like people's wastewater, right? You get a wastewater treatment plant, everybody pumped their water to one central zone, they condensed it, cleaned it, and then they had their effluent or what they pumped out of the wastewater treatment plant as their offshoot material that a lot of times just goes to wetlands or back into the environment because there's nowhere else to put it. And when you concentrate everybody's water like that, what you're doing is you're concentrating the little trace amounts of PFAS in all the water into one central area.
As if they're not toxic enough on their own.
And so sometimes, exactly. The nice thing is it seems like reverse osmosis units that go ahead and pull everything out of your water, like what my folks had growing up with my water that always
my dad
tasted
had
so good at all
reverse
of our
osmosis
sporting
in the
events.
house in Oldline. Yep.
That seems to just blow it right out of the water, no problem. So that's been a good one. So that's sort of the new age. That's the new craze, right? Like what was it? CFCs back when we were growing up that were melting the ozone from refrigerant, right? And there's this is today's like scare chemical almost, where it's like, okay, well, we got to figure out where this is, how to deal with it, where it is. But it's one of those where you got to be real careful. You use special water for the testing that doesn't have PFAS in it. That way you're not contaminating your sample. You're using water that's got it in it, and then you're testing. It's like, well, now it's there anyway, but was it really in the soil in the first place, or is it in the water you used for the medium?
And the control sample is contaminated just to make sure that they can pass it through, the FDA.
Exactly.
That definitely doesn't happen, by the way. Don't research that. But PFAS stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Yeah.
That's the one.
And also, by the way, it says
substance one,
fluoro in it for
and
fluoride.
polyfluoroalkyl
So
substance.
per and poly, multiple fluoroalkyl
Yep,
substances.
per and
So yeah, that's when you see
Stuff
those
to watch
Brita
out for.
filters and it says they're taking out fluoride, that's a real thing. There's fluoride in the tap. But yeah,
right. That's a nice thing too, because one of the ways that one of the technologies they use to contain PFAS spills, right? So if a fire breaks out somewhere, right, and the firefighters come and they spray the fire foam on everything, like that's got tons of it in it because the chemical works really well for stopping fires. And then all of that leaches into the ground, and if you have like a plume that's moving in a certain direction on the top of the water, if you drill holes in the ground and fill it full of activated carbon, it'll actually leach. The organic style soil will bind up the PFAS. The PFAS loves it. It sticks right to it like glue. And so you'll get an area where it's easier for the water to flow through the ground. You'll have the plume move towards these basically Brita filters that you stuck in the ground, and it grabs it all up, and then you can pull it and send it to get processed and cleaned up at like a more specialized like waste cleanup facility, and then just keep replacing the carbon in the ground, literally just like Brita filters. It's a cool analog that I learned in my classes about how it works, and I was like, is this how this actually works? Is it just like a big Brita filter in the ground? And my doctorate professor was like,
so
yeah, that's
it's not
exactly
using
how it works.
activated
It's really nice.
charcoal, right? It's using
No, it's more like organic style. There's a couple different compounds that you can use, but it's like a high organic style soil where you mix it in.
I would be
and let
curious
it
about
bind
the
up
exact
and flows
constituent
through it.
components of that filter. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my hand. That's sort of one of those technologies I like touched on and was exposed to. But that's when I was talking about, hey, if there's a project somewhere in the country that's working with something specific and cool, that's what I have my ear to the ground for that kind of stuff. Because if I can actually have boots on the ground for some of this emergent technology and people tackling these new ideas, it's going to make me even more valuable.
And I just kind of wonder if there's a
marketplace,
company in your field that just buys activated charcoal in bulk because, I think I forget exactly what the size of it was, but like a dime or like a quarter-sized piece of activated charcoal has enough porous surface area to cover a football field. Which sounds fake.
Wow.
But it's
crazy.
real.
Like actual surface. But when you think about every single side of every grain inside of it, the total surface area of the whole thing across every single grain in the piece of material.
And
it's got a
you
lot
probably
bigger
noticed,
area than you might
after
expect.
a fun Saturday night that we had a while back when you had some activated charcoal pills, probably felt a little better,
Oh yeah.